What if we told you Meghan Markle's steamy scenes and Suits weren't all acting, and Patrick J. Adams just dropped a bombshell that could shake the royal family to its core? In a stunning revelation, Patrick J. Adams has confessed what really happened behind those intimate scenes with Meghan Markle on the set of Suits, admitting they made love together off-camera. As this shocking claim ignites headlines worldwide, questions swirl. Was this a fleeting Hollywood mistake? Or the secret Meghan hoped would never surface now that she's royalty? Tonight, we uncover hidden details from the set, insider testimonies, and how this confession threatens Meghan's carefully crafted image. Stay tuned, because what we're about to reveal will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about the Duchess of Sussex. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. The world has always been fascinated with the secret lives of celebrities. But when a story combines the glamour of Hollywood, the heat of on-screen chemistry, and the weight of royal responsibility, it becomes explosive. Patrick J. Adams, the charming actor best known for his role as Mike Ross on the hit TV series Suits, has broken his silence. After years of keeping quiet, he has finally revealed what really happened behind those intimate scenes with Meghan Markle, his co-star, and now the Duchess of Sussex. And his confession is sending shockwaves through fans of Suits, royal watchers, and the entertainment industry alike. It began innocently enough, or at least, that's how it appeared. When Suits first aired in 2011, audiences were immediately captivated by the dynamic between Mike Ross and Rachel Zane, portrayed by Adams and Markle. Their romance felt raw, passionate, and, above all, real. Week after week, viewers tuned in not just for the legal drama but for the simmering chemistry between the two leads. Many wondered, was this just great acting? Or was there something deeper going on? For years, Patrick and Meghan deflected such questions. They insisted their connection was purely professional, born out of trust and respect for each other as actors. But now, Patrick's bombshell revelation has shattered that narrative. In a candid interview that few saw coming, he admitted that during the filming of one particularly intimate scene, the line between acting and reality blurred, and stayed blurred long after the director called cut. What really happened that night on set? And how has it remained a secret for so long? To understand the full weight of Patrick's confession, we have to go back to the beginning. Back to those early days of Suits when a young actress from Los Angeles was still finding her footing in Hollywood, and a charismatic Canadian actor was stepping into the role that would define his career. Meghan Markle wasn't a household name in 2011. Before landing Suits, her acting career had been a mix of small parts and brief appearances in films and TV shows. But from the moment she auditioned for the role of Rachel Zane, producers saw something special. Patrick Adams saw it too. She walked into the room, and it was like the air shifted, Patrick recalled in his interview. There was an energy about her. She was confident, warm, funny. You couldn't help but be drawn to her. Their chemistry was immediate. So immediate, in fact, that the casting directors didn't need to see any more. Meghan was Rachel. Patrick was Mike. Together, they would carry one of television's most compelling love stories. As filming began, that on-screen spark only grew stronger. The writing was sharp, the dialogue crackled, and the two actors seemed to fall into an effortless rhythm. But it wasn't just their scenes that caught people's attention. Crew members began whispering about their bond off-camera. They were always together, one anonymous crew member said years later. Between takes, during breaks, they just seemed inseparable. It was like they were in their own little bubble. At first, this closeness was chalked up to professional camaraderie. It made sense. In order to convincingly portray lovers, Patrick and Meghan needed to trust each other completely. They rehearsed tirelessly, often working late into the night to perfect their scenes. But not everyone was convinced it stopped there. Have you ever been in a room with two people who are trying really hard to pretend they're just friends? Another insider said. It's almost more obvious because they're overcompensating. That's how it felt with Patrick and Meghan sometimes. The rumors intensified during the filming of Season 2, when Mike and Rachel's relationship took center stage. Their first major love scene, in particular, became a talking point, not just for fans but for those behind the camera. It was electric, said one director who worked on the episode. You didn't feel like you were watching two actors performing. You felt like you were intruding on something real, something intimate. And it was during that scene, Patrick now claims, that things shifted forever. We were in the middle of shooting, and everything just clicked, Patrick said in his interview. There was this moment where I looked into her eyes, and it wasn't Mike looking at Rachel. It was me looking at her. And I could tell she felt it too. What happened next, he says, wasn't planned. It wasn't in the script. When the director yelled, "Cut," neither of us moved. We just stayed there, holding each other, breathing each other in. And then, I don't know how else to say it. We kissed, not as our characters, but as ourselves. For a long time after that, they didn't talk about what happened. Both were in complicated personal situations. Megan was married at the time to producer Trevor Engelson, while Patrick was in a long-term relationship. But the pull between them, Patrick claims, was undeniable. And it wasn't just one moment. That night, after we wrapped, we ended up spending hours together in her trailer, Patrick confessed. We talked, we laughed, we drank wine. And yes, we made love. It wasn't planned. It wasn't something we ever expected to happen. But it did. If Patrick's account is true, it raises countless questions. Did Megan share the same feelings? How did they keep such a secret under wraps for so long? And why is Patrick choosing to speak out now, years later, when Megan's life has taken such a dramatic turn? In the next part of this video, we're going to dig deeper into what Patrick said in his interview, examine Megan's reaction, or lack thereof, and explore how this revelation could shake not just Hollywood, but also Buckingham Palace. Because if there's one thing clear from Patrick's words, it's this. The love story of Mike and Rachel may have been scripted, but what happened behind the scenes was anything but fiction. The phenomenon of Suits wasn't born overnight. It started as a modest legal drama, one among many vying for attention on television. But within months of its premiere in 2011, it became clear this show had something different, something electric. Viewers weren't just tuning in for the courtroom battles or the witty dialogue. They were drawn into the magnetic pull between its two leads, Mike Ross and Rachel Zane, portrayed by Patrick J. Adams and Meghan Markle. The story of Suits revolved around Mike Ross, a brilliant college dropout who finds himself working as a lawyer despite never attending law school. Rachel Zane, a paralegal with ambitions of her own, becomes both his professional ally and his love interest. But what could have easily been another predictable romance was instead brought to life with raw passion and an emotional honesty that felt rare on television. Patrick and Meghan's on-screen chemistry was undeniable. From their very first scene together, there was a spark, an energy that seemed almost too real to be scripted. Fans felt it. Critics noticed it. Even their co-stars couldn't ignore it. There was something about the way they looked at each other, one crew member later recalled. It wasn't just acting. It felt like we were watching two people who were genuinely drawn to one another. But what made their scenes so compelling wasn't just the heat, it was the tenderness. Mike and Rachel weren't just lovers. They were vulnerable with each other in ways that made audiences believe in their story. They shared stolen glances, whispered confessions, and moments of silence that spoke louder than words. Behind the camera, though, things were equally intense. The writers of Suits knew they had struck gold with Patrick and Meghan's chemistry, and they weren't afraid to push the boundaries. Each season brought more intimate scenes, more emotional entanglements, and more opportunities for the actors to explore their connection in front of millions of viewers. Filming such scenes isn't easy. It requires trust, vulnerability, and a willingness to let go of inhibitions. For Patrick and Meghan, that trust came naturally. We worked hard to create a safe space for those moments, Patrick said in a 2013 interview, years before his more shocking revelations. There has to be a level of respect and understanding between two actors in scenes like that. And Meghan and I, we just got each other. But some wondered if that understanding went beyond professionalism. There were rumors. Small at first, then louder as the seasons went on, that their connection wasn't confined to the script. Paparazzi photos showed them laughing together between takes, their bodies angled toward each other as if no one else existed. They had this energy, said one assistant director who worked on the show. You could feel it when they walked into a room. It was electric and maybe a little dangerous. One key moment that fueled speculation came during the filming of Season 2. Mike and Rachel's first love scene was intense, even by Suits standards. The script called for passion, vulnerability, in the sense that these two characters couldn't keep their hands off each other any longer. What happened during that scene, Patrick would later admit, was unlike anything he had experienced in his career. There was a moment where we weren't acting anymore, Patrick confessed years later. It felt like the world around us disappeared. It was just her and me. And I think we both felt it. The director, sensing the depth of their connection, let the cameras roll longer than planned. What was supposed to be a quick cut turned into a full minute of unscripted passion. When the scene was over, everyone was silent, the director said. We all felt like we had witnessed something private. In interviews at the time, Patrick and Meghan laughed off the intensity of their scenes, insisting they were simply doing their jobs. But even then, their words carried a weight that suggested more. It's about trust, Meghan said in a behind-the-scenes featurette. You have to trust your scene partner completely. With Patrick, that trust was always there. Fans weren't convinced it ended there. Message boards lit up with speculation. Was it possible that the love story between Mike and Rachel wasn't entirely fictional? Were Patrick and Meghan bringing their real feelings to the screen? For years, these questions remained unanswered. Patrick continued dating Troian Bellisario, his longtime girlfriend and later wife. Meghan married Trevor Engelson, though that relationship ended in divorce in 2013. Now, with Patrick's shocking admission about what happened off-camera, those old questions feel more pressing than ever. If their scenes felt real, it's because, at least for one night, they were. The Suits phenomenon wasn't just about sharp suits, legal intrigue, and fast-talking lawyers. It was about the unspoken emotions that simmered just below the surface. And as Patrick's confession reveals, those emotions weren't entirely an act. The legacy of Suits is forever intertwined with the story of Patrick and Meghan, a story that may have started in the script but took on a life of its own when the cameras stopped rolling. In the next chapter, we'll dive into how Patrick and Meghan navigated their professional and personal lives on set, and what Patrick says happened the night after filming that first love scene. A night he claims neither of them will ever forget. From the very first table read, there was something unmistakable about the way Patrick J. Adams and Meghan Markle gravitated toward each other. It wasn't scripted, and it couldn't be rehearsed. Even before cameras rolled, there was a kind of magnetic pull between them that others on the set couldn't help but notice. When Patrick first met Meghan, she was still finding her place in Hollywood. She wasn't yet the Duchess of Sussex, nor was she a household name. She was Rachel Zane, a fiercely intelligent paralegal with a sharp wit and a vulnerable heart. Patrick, already seasoned with roles on stage and screen, was stepping into his first major leading role. Together, they would breathe life into Mike and Rachel, a pair whose love story would later captivate millions. But their on-screen romance didn't happen instantly. In fact, the creators of Suits had originally planned for Rachel to be little more than a side character. It was the undeniable chemistry between Meghan and Patrick that changed everything. From the moment they read their first scene together, we knew we had lightning in a bottle, said Aaron Korsh, the creator of Suits. There was this raw energy between them. It wasn't just acting, it was something deeper. It was real. That energy became the backbone of the show. Mike and Rachel weren't just another TV couple. Their relationship felt grounded, authentic, and filled with emotional highs and lows that mirrored real-life love stories. As Patrick and Meghan dove deeper into their roles, the boundaries between their characters and themselves began to blur. There's a level of intimacy that comes with filming romantic scenes, Patrick admitted in one interview years ago, long before his recent revelations. You have to trust your scene partner completely, because you're both exposing yourselves, not just physically, but emotionally. That trust was evident to everyone watching. Directors often remarked on how easy it was to get compelling performances out of the two. There was no need for extensive coaching or multiple takes. Patrick and Meghan seemed to instinctively understand each other's rhythms. During love scenes, they were electric, said one assistant director. You'd call cut, but sometimes they wouldn't break character right away. They'd stay in the moment, still holding each other, still looking into each other's eyes. It made you wonder what was going through their minds. But as natural as their connection seemed, it came with challenges. Both actors were in serious relationships at the time. Meghan was married to film producer Trevor Engelson, while Patrick was dating actress Troian Bellisario. Maintaining professionalism was crucial, not just for the sake of their partners, but also for their careers. Still, the rumors persisted. Crew members whispered about how often Patrick and Meghan disappeared between takes. Sometimes they would be seen sitting close together in her trailer, talking and laughing. Other times they'd be caught walking around the lot long after everyone else had gone home. They were very careful, said one crew member. But there were moments when you can see the walls slip. A glance that lingered too long. A touch that seemed more than friendly. As the series progressed, the scripts called for even more intimate scenes between Mike and Rachel. One in particular, filmed during Season 2, would become iconic, not just for fans but for the actors themselves. The scene takes place late at night in a dimly lit office. Mike and Rachel, after months of pent-up tension, finally give in to their feelings. The camera captures every breath, every touch, every unspoken word between them. It's a masterclass in romantic storytelling and, according to Patrick's recent confession, a moment where fiction and reality collided. That scene was different, Patrick revealed in his tell-all interview. We'd done intimate scenes before, but this one, something changed. We weren't just Mike and Rachel anymore. It felt like we were Patrick and Megan. He described how, as the cameras rolled, they became lost in each other. I looked at her, and it wasn't acting. The world fell away. It was just us. When the director called cut, they didn't move. We stayed there, holding each other. Neither of us said a word. And then, I kissed her. Not because the script said to, but because I wanted to. And she didn't pull away. Patrick's voice cracked as he recalled that night. Afterwards, we didn't talk about it. We couldn't. It was too complicated. But we both knew something had shifted. The days that followed were a blur of emotions. They tried to act normal on set, but the tension was palpable. Every touch, every look carried a new weight. For Patrick, it was more than physical. I cared about her, he admitted. I think a part of me fell in love with her during those months. But Megan was cautious. She was always careful, always thinking about the bigger picture. She had her own life, her own struggles. And I respected that. Still, there were moments when their connection was impossible to ignore. One evening after a long day of shooting, Patrick stopped by Megan's trailer. They shared a bottle of wine, talking late into the night. It felt so natural, he said, like we'd known each other forever. That night, according to Patrick, they crossed a line they could never uncross. We made love. It wasn't planned. It wasn't something either of us set out to do. But it happened. And it was beautiful. Patrick's words have reignited debates among fans and critics alike. Was it a fleeting moment of passion born from the intensity of their work, or was it something more profound? What's certain is that their connection, whatever its nature, became an indelible part of Suits' legacy. As one co-star put it, you can't fake that kind of chemistry. Whatever was going on between them, it made Mike and Rachel unforgettable. In the next chapter, we'll explore that unforgettable night in Megan's trailer in vivid detail, and examine how Patrick and Megan managed to keep their secret hidden for so long, even as the world watched their every move. The air inside the studio that evening was thick with anticipation. Even for a seasoned cast and crew, there was a sense that what they were about to film would be different, more intense, more revealing, and possibly more real than anything they had captured before. It was the scene everyone had been waiting for. For 2 seasons, viewers of Suits had watched Mike Ross and Rachel Zane dance around their feelings. There were glances that lingered too long, casual touches that sent shockwaves through their fictional office, and moments when their chemistry seemed to sizzle right off the screen. Now, finally, the writers had decided it was time for the dam to break. This was the night they would film Mike and Rachel's first love scene. On the page, it was simple enough. A heated argument between the two characters would lead to an explosion of passion in the file room. But as Patrick J. Adams and Meghan Markle stood on set, rehearsing their lines, they both sensed this was more than just another day at work. It wasn't just the characters who had been building toward that moment, Patrick later confessed. It was us too. Every late-night rehearsal, every look across the room, every time we laughed at a private joke, there was something there. And that night, it felt like it was all coming to the surface. As the cameras began to roll, the scene unfolded like a storm. The argument was fiery, their voices raised, faces flushed with emotion. And then, in a single heartbeat, the anger melted into desire. Their lips met. The kiss started rough, almost desperate, but quickly softened into something deeper, something more intimate. Patrick's hands traced the curve of Megan's back, pulling her closer. Megan's fingers tangled in his hair as she responded with equal intensity. We weren't thinking about the cameras, Patrick said. We weren't thinking about the crew watching us or the fact that millions of people would see this later. It felt like the world had fallen away. There was only her and me. The director, sensing the raw emotion of the moment, didn't call cut right away. He let the cameras linger, capturing every breathless second. For those watching on the monitors, it was mesmerizing. You could feel it in the room. Recall the camera operator who was there that night. It didn't feel like we were filming a TV show. It felt like we were intruding on something private. When the director finally ended the take, there was silence. Patrick and Megan didn't break apart immediately. They stood there, foreheads pressed together, eyes still locked as if they were the only two people in existence. I couldn't let go, Patrick admitted. And neither could she. Afterwards, the atmosphere on set was different. The crew went about their work in hushed tones, as if unwilling to disrupt whatever had just happened between the two actors. Patrick and Megan avoided each other's eyes for the rest of the shoot. It was like we both knew we'd crossed an invisible line, Patrick said. We weren't just Mike and Rachel anymore. We were Patrick and Megan, and that terrified us. But the night didn't end there. After wrapping, Patrick found himself unable to sleep. His mind replayed the scene over and over again, not as a professional achievement, but as an intensely personal moment. He thought about Megan's touch, the softness of her lips, the way her eyes had searched his in the dim light. On impulse, he walked to her trailer. She answered the door in her pajamas, Patrick recalled. We just stared at each other for a long time. Then she stepped aside and let me in. Inside, the air was warm and heavy with the scent of vanilla candles. Megan poured them each a glass of wine, and they sat together on the small couch, talking in low voices about everything and nothing. I told her I didn't know what was happening between us, Patrick said, and she said she didn't either. But we both knew we couldn't ignore it anymore. As the night stretched on, words gave way to silence. And in that silence, they crossed a line they could never uncross. We made love, Patrick confessed. It wasn't planned. It wasn't about lust or rebellion. It was tender. It felt inevitable, like it was always going to happen. He paused in his recollection, his voice thick with emotion. I remember lying there afterwards, holding her, thinking, this changes everything. And it did. The next morning, they agreed not to talk about it. Not to anyone, not even each other. They had lives outside of Suits. Megan was still married at the time, though her relationship with Trevor Engelson was already strained. Patrick was in a long-term relationship that would later become his marriage to Troyan Bellisario. But no matter how hard they tried, they couldn't erase what had happened. On set, their chemistry was more intense than ever. Every scene between Mike and Rachel seemed to crackle with unspoken tension. Fans noticed. Critics noticed. Even their co-stars noticed. You could feel it, said one cast member. It was like watching two people trying desperately to pretend they weren't in love. For years, they carried the secret. Megan eventually divorced Trevor and went on to marry Prince Harry, stepping into a world where every aspect of her life was scrutinized. Patrick married Troyan and became a father. But that night in the trailer remained, locked away in their memories. And now, with Patrick finally speaking out, the question on everyone's mind is simple. Why now? Why reveal a secret that could shake not only Hollywood but also Buckingham Palace? In the next chapter, we'll examine Patrick's reasons for coming forward, Megan's silence in the face of his revelations, and how this confession could alter the way the world sees her forever. The night after filming the love scene, everything felt different for Patrick J. Adams. The world outside the set seemed muted, almost unreal, as if he were moving through a fog. His heart was still pounding from what had happened on camera, but even more from what had lingered long after the director had called cut. He left the studio late, hours after most of the crew had gone home. His footsteps echoed in the empty halls, but his mind was far from the present. It was with Megan, still replaying every moment, every glance, every electric touch they had shared in front of the camera. What unsettled him wasn't just how real it felt. It was the realization that he didn't want it to be acting anymore. She stayed in my head, Patrick admitted later. The way she looked at me. The way we held each other. It felt like there was no separation between us and the characters we were playing. As he drove home, the Los Angeles night stretched out before him, but his hands gripped the steering wheel tighter than usual. He could still feel her warmth, the faint scent of her perfume lingering on his clothes. It wasn't just adrenaline. It wasn't just a scene. And so, instead of heading straight home, he found himself circling back to the studio lot. Megan's trailer light was still on. Patrick hesitated outside for what felt like an eternity, staring at the faint glow behind the blinds. Every logical voice in his head screamed at him to leave, to drive away, to forget what had happened earlier. But his feet didn't listen. He knocked softly. The door creaked open, and there she was, her hair down, no makeup, wearing a loose sweater and yoga pants. "Patrick," she said, her voice soft but edged with surprise. "What are you doing here?" "I don't know," he admitted, his words tumbling out before he could stop them. I couldn't leave things like that." For a moment, they just stood there, neither moving nor speaking. Then Megan stepped aside and motioned him in. Inside, her trailer smelled faintly of vanilla and lavender. A half-empty glass of wine sat on the small table beside her script pages. She curled her legs beneath her on the couch and watched him, her eyes searching his face as if trying to read his thoughts. About earlier, she began, but Patrick shook his head. Don't, he said gently. Let's not pretend it didn't happen. We both felt it. She didn't argue. Instead, she poured him a glass of wine, and they sat together in the dimly lit space, talking in hushed tones. At first, they discussed trivial things, work, upcoming scenes, the exhausting pace of shooting, but there was an undercurrent neither could ignore. Every so often, their eyes would meet and hold, longer than necessary, heavy with the weight of unspoken words. And then, the silence came. The kind of silence that doesn't feel empty but charged, almost deafening. Patrick reached for her hand. She didn't pull away. I don't know where this is going, he whispered. Neither do I, she replied. But it doesn't feel wrong. When their lips met again, it wasn't like earlier on set. There were no cameras, no lights, no crew. Just the two of them, raw and unguarded. It felt real, Patrick said later. More real than anything else in my life at that moment. They made love that night, slowly, deliberately, as if memorizing every detail. It wasn't about lust or passion, Patrick confessed. It was gentle. It was us, outside of everything else. Afterwards, they lay together in the small bed, her head resting on his chest. Neither spoke for a long time. But as dawn crept through the blinds, reality began to seep back in. Megan sat up, pulling the blanket around her shoulders. This can't happen again, she said softly, almost apologetically. Patrick nodded, though every part of him wanted to argue. I know, he murmured, but I don't regret it. Neither do I. They shared one last lingering kiss before Patrick left, slipping out quietly into the breaking morning light. For the next few days on set, they kept their distance, speaking only when necessary. But the tension between them was impossible to ignore. It was like walking a tightrope, Patrick recalled. We both knew what we'd done. We both knew it couldn't continue. But every time I looked at her, it felt like we were still back in that trailer. Even as they returned to being Mike and Rachel in front of the cameras, their connection seemed deeper, more layered. Fans would later call those episodes the most emotionally powerful of the series. But behind the scenes, Patrick struggled. I felt torn apart, he admitted. On one hand, I had my own relationship, my own life. On the other hand, there was Megan, and what we shared felt impossible to deny. Megan, too, seemed to wrestle with conflicting emotions. She grew quieter on set, often retreating to her trailer between takes. Crew members noticed a change in her demeanor, though no one dared to ask why. For years, they kept their secret buried. Patrick threw himself into his relationship with Troy and Belisario, eventually marrying her. Megan's marriage to Trevor Engelson crumbled, and later, she would step into a royal life that seemed worlds away from the dimly lit trailer where she and Patrick had shared that night. But as much as they tried to move on, the memory lingered. It wasn't just a fling, Patrick said. It was something that changed both of us, even if we never spoke of it again. Now, years later, with Megan's life under constant scrutiny as a duchess and Patrick's career evolving in new directions, the revelation of their night together threatens to unravel carefully guarded images. Why has Patrick chosen this moment to speak out? What does Megan think of his confession? And how might this revelation shake not only Hollywood but Buckingham Palace itself? In the next chapter, we'll delve into Patrick's reasoning for breaking his silence, and why Meghan's response, or lack thereof, may be the most telling part of this story. Meghan Markle had built her life around carefully curated silences. From her early days in Hollywood to her unprecedented rise as a British royal, she had learned that silence was often her greatest weapon, her strongest shield. But this revelation from Patrick J. Adams was different. When the news broke, it spread like wildfire. Tabloids devoured Patrick's confession about their night together on the set of Suits. Social media exploded with speculation. Every corner of the internet buzzed with the same question. How would Meghan respond? She didn't. Not at first. Her silence became a story in itself. For days, then weeks, journalists camped outside her Montecito mansion, cameras trained on the gates, hoping for a glimpse of her. Inside, Meghan reportedly walked the halls of her sprawling home in quiet contemplation, her phone clutched tightly in her hand as though expecting a call that never came. Meghan has always been very measured in how she responds to controversy, said one former palace aide. But this situation is particularly delicate. This isn't about her relationship with Harry. This is about her past, a part of her life she thought was long buried. Behind closed doors, those closest to Meghan say she was shaken. She was blindsided, said a friend who spoke under the condition of anonymity. Patrick was someone she trusted. They had this bond, this shared history. For him to come out and talk about something so private, it felt like a betrayal. But Meghan also understood the stakes. This wasn't just about old Hollywood gossip. She was no longer simply Meghan Markle, the actress. She was the Duchess of Sussex, wife of Prince Harry, mother of 2 royal children, and a global figure under relentless scrutiny. Every word she spoke, every move she made, carried weight. She knows that anything she says can and will be twisted, the friend explained. If she denies it outright, people will call her a liar. If she confirms it, they'll accuse her of infidelity or worse. It's a lose-lose situation. In public, Meghan kept up appearances. She was photographed smiling with Harry at a charity event, her hand resting protectively on his arm. But those who know her best say the smile didn't reach her eyes. She's furious, of course, said another source. But more than that, she's scared. She's worked so hard to control her narrative, and now that control has been ripped away. Inside Buckingham Palace, the mood was reportedly tense. Though Meghan and Harry had stepped back from royal duties, their actions still reflected on the monarchy. This is deeply embarrassing for the royal family, said one palace insider. The Duchess's past is her own, but revelations like this can damage the institution's image. They're watching her very closely to see how she handles it. Harry, meanwhile, is said to be torn. He's standing by Meghan, of course, said a friend of the couple. But he's also struggling. He knows what life in the spotlight is like. He knows how damaging this could be. And there's a part of him that wonders if there's more to the story than Meghan is telling him. According to multiple sources, Harry confronted Meghan directly about Patrick's confession. He asked her outright if it was true, said one insider. She didn't deny it. But she told him it was a moment from her past, long before she met him, and it had no bearing on their marriage. Still, Harry's face reportedly darkened when Meghan admitted she and Patrick never spoke about that night again. Harry hates secrets, the insider explained. He's had enough of them in his own family. So for Meghan to have kept something like this buried for so long, it hit him harder than he expected. Publicly, though, Harry has remained steadfast. In a brief statement issued through their spokesperson, the couple dismissed Patrick's comments as a distraction from the important work they're doing. But Meghan's silence has only fueled more speculation. She's damned if she does, damned if she doesn't, said a PR expert. At this point, her silence looks like an admission to some people, but a response could open the floodgates to even more scrutiny. Meanwhile, Patrick's words continue to reverberate. I think Meghan wishes he would just disappear, said the friend. But he hasn't. He's still out there, doing interviews, telling his side of the story. And she's left to pick up the pieces. Some have questioned Patrick's motives for speaking out now, years after the fact. Is he trying to sell a book? Is this about fame? Or is there something deeper going on? Asked one commentator. But others argue that Meghan's silence speaks louder than any denial. If it wasn't true, she'd say so, said one tabloid headline. The fact that she hasn't tells you everything you need to know. Yet those who know Meghan insist she's playing the long game. Meghan's not impulsive, said the friend. She's calculating her response carefully. She knows one wrong move could destroy everything she's built. For now, Meghan continues to project an image of calm. But behind the scenes, she's reportedly consulting her lawyers and PR team, weighing her options. She's considering a lawsuit, said one source. Not necessarily against Patrick, but against any outlet that republishes his claims as fact. The question remains, how long can Meghan stay silent? And if she does speak, what will she say? In the next chapter, we'll explore the impact of Patrick's confession on Meghan's royal image, and how this revelation could alter her future, not just in Hollywood, but on the world stage. Because silence, as powerful as it is, can only hold for so long before the truth, or the perception of it, comes crashing down. Hollywood has always been a place where boundaries blur. The bright lights, the late nights, the constant demand for emotional vulnerability, all of it creates an atmosphere where lines between professional and personal can evaporate without warning. For decades, actors have talked about how easy it is to confuse their on-screen relationships with real-life emotions. But Patrick J. Adams and Meghan Markle's story has reignited a long-running debate. How much responsibility do actors, directors, and producers bear when those blurred lines turn into something far more intimate? Patrick's confession about what happened during and after his love scenes with Meghan has left people divided. Some see it as a tender, honest recollection of a fleeting moment between two young actors caught in the whirlwind of Hollywood. Others see it as yet another example of how the entertainment industry normalizes emotional entanglements that would raise eyebrows in any other profession. It's not uncommon for actors to develop real feelings during intimate scenes, said one industry insider. You're spending hours rehearsing, you're in each other's personal space, and you're asked to create chemistry on demand. It's like playing with fire. But where's the line? Critics argue that Patrick's revelation highlights a problematic culture where actors aren't always given the tools or the space to separate themselves from their characters. On-screen intimacy coordinators, now common in Hollywood, didn't exist in the same way when Suits was being filmed. Back then, the responsibility for maintaining boundaries often fell entirely on the actors themselves. It's a lot of pressure, said an intimacy coordinator who's worked on several high-profile TV shows. You're asked to make these moments look authentic, but you're also supposed to keep it purely professional. Without proper guidance, it's easy for those boundaries to collapse. For Meghan and Patrick, the collapse was complete. Patrick admitted that their chemistry was too strong to ignore and that the emotional connection they built for their roles spilled over into their real lives. We were caught up in it, he said. The show was everything to us at that time. The characters became part of us, and it became harder and harder to tell where Mike and Rachel ended and where Patrick and Meghan began. Hollywood is full of stories like this, stories of co-stars who fell for each other while filming steamy scenes. Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie on Mr. and Mrs. Smith. Kristen Stewart and Robert Pattinson on Twilight. Ryan Gosling and Rachel McAdams on The Notebook. But what makes Patrick and Meghan's case different is that one of them went on to marry into one of the world's most scrutinized families. Meghan didn't just leave Hollywood. She became a duchess, a symbol of tradition and propriety for millions. That transformation has amplified the scandal. Meghan isn't just an actress anymore, said a royal commentator. She's part of the British monarchy, an institution that demands absolute decorum. This isn't just a Hollywood gossip story anymore. It's a potential royal crisis. Yet, some defenders argue that Meghan's past shouldn't be held against her. She was a young woman working in a tough industry, said one feminist author. If there was a real connection between her and Patrick, that's their business. She doesn't owe the world an explanation. But others point out that Patrick's decision to speak out raises questions about power dynamics. Why now? Asked one media critic. Why tell this story at all, especially knowing how it could damage Meghan? Is this about honesty or something else? Patrick insists his confession wasn't meant to harm Meghan. I'm not trying to hurt her, he said. I just wanted to tell the truth about what happened. For years, we both acted like it never existed, but it did, and it mattered. Still, some see his timing as suspect. With Meghan already facing relentless media scrutiny, this revelation feels like gasoline on an already raging fire. Hollywood loves to build people up and then tear them down, said a former producer. Meghan's been through enough. And now this. The debate touches on deeper issues within the entertainment industry about consent, professionalism, and the emotional cost of performing intimacy for an audience. Actors need better support systems, said the intimacy coordinator. We have to stop romanticizing these blurred lines and start protecting the people involved. For Patrick and Meghan, the damage is already done. Their shared moment has gone from a private memory to a public spectacle. In the next chapter, we'll explore how this revelation threatens Meghan's carefully crafted royal image and what Buckingham Palace is doing behind the scenes to contain the fallout. Because in Hollywood, blurred lines can ruin careers. But in the monarchy, they can topple entire dynasties. For Meghan Markle, her transition from Hollywood actress to Duchess of Sussex was nothing short of extraordinary. It was the ultimate reinvention, a woman born and raised in Los Angeles crossing continents and cultures to become part of one of the oldest monarchies in the world. But that carefully crafted royal image, built with precision and guarded fiercely, now faces its most dangerous threat yet. Patrick J. Adams' revelation has cracked the protective shell Meghan spent years building around her personal life. His confession of a night of intimacy during their time on Suits has not only dragged her Hollywood past back into the spotlight, it's also reignited doubts about whether Meghan was ever truly prepared for the weight of royal expectation. Inside Buckingham Palace, the mood is tense. Though Meghan and Harry officially stepped back from royal duties in early 2020, their names remain intertwined with the House of Windsor. Every scandal linked to them reverberates through the walls of the monarchy, risking reputational damage that extends far beyond the Sussexes themselves. "This isn't just Meghan's problem anymore," said a royal insider. "It's a royal problem, and the palace is watching very, very closely." For Meghan, the stakes couldn't be higher. Her royal status has always been precarious. As the first mixed-race woman to marry into the family, her mere presence challenged centuries of tradition. Critics scrutinized her every move, from her choice of nail polish to her relationship with her father. Now, Patrick's words threaten to undo the narrative she's worked so hard to control. In Hollywood, the line between reality and fiction is often blurred. But in the monarchy, perception is everything. "This isn't about what she actually did or didn't do," said one royal commentator. "It's about how it looks. And right now, it looks messy." The British press, never shy about Meghan-related scandals, pounced on Patrick's confession. Headlines screamed, "Patrick J. Adams claims intimate night with Meghan Markle. What will Harry do?" From suits to secrets, Meghan's past comes back to haunt her. Did Meghan betray the royal code of conduct? Even reputable broadsheets couldn't resist covering the story, albeit with a more measured tone. Still, the damage was done. Within days, Meghan's name trended globally on social media. Hashtags like #MeghanScandal and #RoyalReputationWar dominated Twitter. Opinion polls in the UK showed a sharp decline in her favorability, with some royal watchers calling for Harry and Meghan to be stripped of their remaining titles. "This is the exact nightmare Meghan was trying to avoid," said a friend of the Duchess. "She knew her Hollywood past would be used against her. That's why she worked so hard to maintain a pristine image after marrying Harry." In Montecito, Meghan has reportedly gone into crisis mode. Her team of PR professionals and legal advisors are working around the clock to contain the fallout. She feels betrayed, cornered, and afraid, the friend revealed. This isn't just about her reputation. It's about her family. It's about Archie and Lilibet growing up in a world where their mother's name is dragged through the mud. Prince Harry, ever protective of Meghan, is said to be furious. But insiders suggest even he is feeling the strain. "Harry's loyalty to Meghan has never wavered," said a royal source. But he's also aware of how fragile their position is. If they lose public sympathy, they lose everything. For the royal family, the situation presents a delicate balancing act. On the one hand, they want to distance themselves from the scandal. On the other, they fear that any overt criticism of Meghan could be interpreted as racially motivated, reigniting accusations of bias within the monarchy. Behind the scenes, palace aides are reportedly discussing strategies to quietly shift attention back to Prince William and Kate Middleton, who have become the family's new public darlings. They want to refocus the narrative, the royal source explained. The last thing they need is another Oprah moment. But Meghan's options are limited. If she speaks out, she risks amplifying the story. If she stays silent, the silence itself will be interpreted as guilt. "It's a no-win situation," said one PR strategist. "The only thing she can do is wait for another news cycle to push this story down the headlines." But with Patrick giving interviews, that may not happen anytime soon. For now, Meghan's public appearances have been carefully choreographed. She's been photographed smiling at charity events and walking hand in hand with Harry on the beach. But those close to her say the serene image masks a deep sense of unease. "She's terrified this could be the crack that shatters everything," said the friend. Her royal image, her marriage, her future. Even if Patrick's confession was never meant to harm her, the consequences are undeniable. Meghan's entire brand, her power, her influence, relies on her ability to control the narrative, said the PR strategist. Right now, that control is slipping through her fingers. As the world watches, one question looms larger than all others. Can Meghan survive this? Or will this scandal mark the beginning of the end for the Duchess of Sussex? In the next chapter, we'll hear from former Suits crew members who claim Patrick and Meghan's connection was obvious long before that fateful night, and explore how whispers from the set are now adding fuel to a fire that refuses to die. On the Suits set, rumors were as much a part of daily life as coffee runs and script rewrites. It wasn't uncommon for cast and crew to speculate about relationships brewing off camera. But when it came to Patrick J. Adams and Meghan Markle, the whispers carried an edge of urgency. Like everyone, since there was more happening than the two actors were willing to admit. In the years since, most of those stories faded into the background. But now, with Patrick's confession reigniting public interest, Former crew members are stepping forward, sharing recollections that paint a vivid, sometimes troubling picture of what really went on during the filming of one of television's most beloved shows. It was obvious from the start, said a production assistant who worked closely with the cast. Patrick and Megan had this chemistry that went beyond acting. Even in rehearsals, you could feel it. When they were in a room together, it was like no one else existed. The assistant described moments when the two would disappear together for long stretches of time between takes. They'd go off to talk in her trailer or take walks around the lot. At first, people thought they were just going over lines, but the way they looked at each other, it didn't feel professional. Other crew members recall seeing Megan and Patrick laughing quietly in corners or exchanging what they called loaded glances on set. It wasn't just friendly banter, said a makeup artist. You could tell there was an undercurrent. The kind of tension that builds up and eventually has to go somewhere. One particularly striking account came from a camera operator who was present during the filming of the now infamous love scene that Patrick described in his recent interview. "I've shot a lot of romantic scenes in my career," he said. "Usually, it's very technical. You're thinking about camera angles, lighting, making sure everything looks right. But that scene, it was different. You could feel the heat between them. It didn't feel like acting. It felt real." When asked if he believed Patrick's claim that they crossed the line after filming wrapped, the camera operator didn't hesitate. "Honestly, it wouldn't surprise me. The way they were that night. It was like they forgot we were even there." Some crew members, however, expressed a mix of sympathy and frustration toward the situation. "They were both in complicated places in their lives," said one senior staffer. "Megan was married. Patrick was in a long-term relationship. I think they tried to fight whatever was happening between them, but being on set together every day, it was a pressure cooker." Another staff member recalled overhearing a heated conversation between Megan and Patrick in her trailer late one night. "I couldn't hear everything, but it sounded emotional. Voices raised, then silence, and then I heard her crying. Whatever was going on, it wasn't simple. In Hollywood, such stories are hardly rare. But what makes this case unique is the context Megan now inhabits. As a duchess, her past is being scrutinized in a way that most actresses never experience. Every whispered anecdote, every long-forgotten rumor, is being unearthed and examined under a microscope. "This isn't just gossip anymore," said a veteran entertainment journalist. "These stories are being used to question her integrity, her character. It's brutal." Despite the growing chorus of voices, not everyone believes the crew's accounts are entirely reliable. "Memory is a tricky thing," said a former producer. "People are coloring their recollections with what they know now. At the time, it may have seemed innocent. But with Patrick's confession out there, everyone wants to believe they saw the signs. Still, the sheer number of similar stories makes them hard to dismiss." "There's too much smoke for there to be no fire," said the makeup artist. For Megan, these crew accounts are potentially more damaging than Patrick's original statement. They suggest that her connection with Patrick wasn't an isolated moment, but an ongoing dynamic visible to dozens of witnesses. "She can deny Patrick's story all she wants," said one royal commentator. "But how does she explain away the people who were there, who saw what they saw?" Patrick, for his part, hasn't commented on these new testimonies. But his initial interview set the tone, and now others are filling in the gaps, whether out of a desire for truth or for their own moment in the spotlight. In the next chapter, we'll examine whether this was love or lust. Was Patrick and Megan's connection a fleeting moment of passion, or was it the beginning of something far deeper that neither could admit to themselves? Because the answer to that question could determine whether this is remembered as a scandal or as a love story that never got the chance to be told. For Patrick J. Adams, the memory of that night with Meghan Markle has never been simple to categorize. Even years later, sitting across from the interviewer in a quiet, dimly lit studio, he seemed hesitant as he searched for the right words. Was it love? Was it lust? Or was it something more complicated, something that didn't fit neatly into either box? "It's hard to explain," Patrick admitted softly, his hands clasped tightly in his lap. "At the time, it felt like everything. Like we were the only two people in the world. But looking back, I don't know if it was love or just the intensity of the moment pulling us under." On the set of Suits, the lines between acting and reality were already blurred. For months, Patrick and Megan had been tasked with creating a convincing romance for the cameras. They'd shared stolen glances, whispered words, and passionate embraces. all in service of their characters, Mike and Rachel. But at what point did the performance end and the real feelings begin? It's one of the great dangers of this profession, said a Hollywood acting coach. When you're asked to be emotionally vulnerable day after day, it can awaken feelings you didn't expect. Sometimes it's real. Sometimes it's just the adrenaline and the intimacy of the work. For Patrick, there's no doubt the feelings he had for Megan were real, at least in the moment. I cared about her deeply, he confessed. There was a connection between us that went beyond the script. Whether that was love, I don't know. But it was powerful. Those who worked alongside them on Suits recall seeing hints of that connection long before the night in Megan's trailer. You could tell he adored her, said one wardrobe assistant. It was in the way he looked at her, the way he smiled when she walked into the room. It wasn't just acting. It felt personal. But Megan, according to crew members, seemed more guarded. She was warm and friendly with Patrick, but she had this ability to compartmentalize, said a hairstylist. She kept her emotions in check in a way he didn't. It's a dynamic that became even more apparent in the aftermath of their intimate encounter. Patrick has described feeling torn apart in the days that followed, wrestling with guilt over his existing relationship and confusion about what he truly felt for Megan. She was constantly on my mind, he said. I didn't know how to act around her. Part of me wanted to confess everything, to tell her how much she meant to me. But I also knew we were in a situation with no easy answers. Megan, by contrast, seemed determined to move forward without looking back. She was pragmatic, said a friend of Megan's from that time. She knew her marriage to Trevor was already on shaky ground, but she wasn't looking to complicate things further. Whatever happened with Patrick, she treated it as a moment, not a beginning. This difference in how they processed the experience raises a question that still haunts Patrick. Did Megan see it the same way he did? Maybe for her, it was just a release, he said, his voice heavy with regret. Maybe she didn't feel what I felt. Or maybe she did and was just better at hiding it. Relationship experts say this kind of disconnect is common in situations like theirs. In any relationship born out of intense circumstances, whether it's a workplace affair, a holiday romance, or in this case, an on-set connection, there's often a disparity in how each person experiences it, explained one therapist. One party might see it as transformative, while the other views it as situational. The question of love versus lust isn't just academic. It shapes how the public views the scandal. If Patrick and Megan were two young actors swept up in a fleeting moment, it might be dismissed as an understandable mistake. But if it was love, if they truly felt something profound for each other, that narrative carries more weight and invites deeper scrutiny. I think Patrick wants people to believe it was more than lust, said one media commentator. That's why he's speaking about it so emotionally. But Megan's silence suggests she doesn't see it that way. Royal watchers have been quick to analyze Megan's behavior in light of Patrick's revelations. Some argue that her refusal to comment indicates guilt. Others see it as a calculated move to avoid dignifying the story with a response. She's trying to protect her family and her image, said a royal biographer. Whether it was love or lust doesn't matter to her anymore. What matters is that it's in the past, and she wants it to stay there. But for Patrick, the past refuses to stay buried. I don't regret what happened, he said quietly. But I regret how we left things. We never talked about it again. It was like we both decided to erase that night. And maybe that's what makes it so hard. I never got to know how she really felt. Was it love? Was it lust? Or was it something else entirely, a brief moment of connection between two people lost in a world of make-believe? As the public debates the answer, Megan's silence speaks volumes. And for Patrick, the memory remains a haunting, unresolved chapter in a story that may never find closure. In the next chapter, we'll explore how this revelation continues to impact both Megan and Patrick in the present day, and how the fallout may shape their futures in ways neither of them could have imagined.